And welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Bard's College of Valor, providing a brief description of the class as well as explain the setup and various features gained through this subclass. Bards of this college tend to work to keep the legends of heroes alive and help inspire following generations into becoming heroes of their own right. They will typically embed themselves into parties who are heavily involved in shaping world events, and primarily to tell their tales, both tragic and heroic. In some cases, the bard themselves becomes part of that legend, further immortalizing their works into the annals of history in ways they might never have meant. Each bard of this school will be involved in singing the songs of local heroes when in a village where one was from, but also will spend time singing of other heroes from afar to help ensure that hero's legend grows. Their songs will honor the fallen, praising the heroic nature of their acts and essentially ensnaring the audience in the rapture or sadness depending on the tone the tale weaves. These bards will also travel to locations where major events are taking place, such as massive wars, or locations where organizations are trying to stop a plague, anywhere there could be the potential for a new hero to be discovered. Players who want to be involved in telling those tales and use a bit of their artistic capabilities will enjoy this class because it provides enough of an outlet for this type of storytelling while still giving the character enough punch to do well in combat situations and support the party. And with that, let's take a look at the various features this particular class specialization gains as they level up. The first two proficiencies are going to be gained at level 3, and that is when the bard chooses their class specialization. So let's do that now. And this time I'm going to choose College of Valor. The first feature that we gain is called Bonus Proficiencies of Valor, while the second one is called Combat Inspiration, and I will go over each of these here in a second. The first one that I'm going to go over is Bonus Proficiencies specific to Valor. And unlike the other college, College of Lore, this one doesn't gain any new skills. Instead, they gain proficiencies with additional equipment, such as medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. Now, unfortunately, you just can't simply drag and drop this into place in order to add these proficiencies to your character sheet. You actually have to go to the Abilities tab, scroll down until you get to Proficiencies, and then add in the new proficiencies. To do so, all you have to do is select a line, doesn't really much matter, and hit enter to create an empty one. And then type in your armor proficiencies. Or you could go and add it to the end of the existing list here. So in this particular case, we have light armor. I'm going to add medium armor to that particular list. We also have shields, so I'm going to add that as a separate line. And then finally, you'll see here where we have simple weapons. I'm also going to add martial weapons. And that's all we have to do in order to actually add the proficiencies we're gaining in this particular skill or feature. The second feature we gain is called Combat Inspiration. And what's happening here is that you are now giving anyone that you grant Bardic Inspiration to the ability to make use of the Bardic Inspiration die roll towards their weapons damage as well as to their armor class. There are two ways that we could add this particular ability to our Actions tab. The first is to drag and drop this particular feature into our Actions tab, create a new grouping called College, not College. Wow, I can't spell today, of Valor. And then add an effect here that gives us the ability to add an AC and damage increase. And this would be Combat Inspiration. Semicolon, and then we would just go DMG colon 1d6 at this particular level, and AC colon 1d6. Yes, you can modify the armor class directly through an effect. And this will be on targets, it will be on next roll, and it will last for 10 minutes, which is the equivalent of the existing duration of Bardic Inspiration. The problem with this particular roll is that the player who has gained this ability now has two effects on them. They both expire separately. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is this. When in a combat situation, when you're about to add the effect to the creature or party member in question that is going to be making this roll, they have to make the decision in advance as to whether they're going to use it for a damage roll, whether they're going to use it for their armor class increase, which in this case has to be done during a reaction, or whether they are going to use it for adding a die to their attack roll, a skill check, or a saving throw. So simply parking this on them isn't going to work because let's say they decide to use it for their attack roll. Well, they make their attack roll, they add the additional die to it, there's a problem. Combat inspiration is still there. Now when they roll the damage, there's going to be an extra amount of die added to that particular damage. That's not what we wanted. That's not how that's supposed to work. So this method, while effective and allows a separation of quote-unquote roles, if you will, can be a bit problematic. So what we want to actually do is remove the effect from here and simply modify this one. The ability of this change in combat inspiration is essentially modifying the ability of Bardic Inspiration to also add damage or AC bonuses whenever you make or apply this to a particular character. D6. Now granted, you have a lot of areas here now to change that every single time we level this character up. And that's fine. So now, if we apply this to the ape in this particular combat scenario, and that ape makes another attack, the effect goes away. So that highlights another aspect of this that you need to coordinate with. You will have to communicate with that creature or party member as to when they're going to make use of it. Now, in the case of an ape, that might be a dungeon master controlling that, so you're going to have to coordinate with that with the dungeon master. But in the case of another player, you can offer them before they make their attack roll. I can provide you a Bardic Inspiration point that you can then use to add a 1d6 die roll to your attack roll, your damage, or to your armor class during a reaction. Which would you like it to be? And then you simply apply the effect to them at the appropriate point in time. So you have to pay attention during combat. That's the best approach in this particular case because then you don't have an accidental roll when the player wanted to use it against the damage roll, but they made their attack roll and the effect was already stacked on their character. Well, now it's gone towards their attack roll. So you still have to actually go through and coordinate things with that particular player. But that is literally all we have to do to this. Now, I didn't have to remove the whole combat inspiration from here. I could add combat inspiration to the group again. Whoops, it's not combat inspiration, it's College of Valor. There I go spelling it college again. And that way I can tell the Dungeon Master I'm using this to modify my Bardic Inspiration to add blah. And then you're done. The other option is that you separate all of these effects out into individual effects. And that might be the best approach because then you can actually go through and allow the player to make the choice and then apply that to them. So if they make an attack roll, but they're saving it for their saving throw, it won't automatically roll. So I'll go through and show you how to set that part up. Well, to do that, we simply copy the contents of this, if you will. So, oops, apparently you have to select everything differently. And I'm going to add the Bardic Inspiration effects here, which are the saving throw, the check, and the attack modifiers. So I need 2 more effects, so 1 more on top of what I've already added. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy this into place. I'm going to leave this as, say, the saving throw. Get rid of that, and then I'm just going to label this as save. The duration is still 10 minutes, and it will be on their next roll. Okay, that takes care of that. I'm also going to paste this into place, and let's say that this is the check-based one. So I'm going to remove that, and then delete everything else, and name this as check. I use the, check all lowercase, so there. Keep everything consistent. It'll be 10 minutes, and it will be on next roll. Now, before I change this, I'm gonna add 2 effects to this particular skill here, or feature, I should say. Just so that I don't have to go through and redo everything, although I will for this particular case, I'm gonna go Combat, Inspiration, and this will be Damage, semicolon, DMG, colon 1d6. The duration will be 10 minutes, and it will be on next roll. And then finally, I'm going to set this up to be Combat Inspiration. And in this particular case, I'm going to put an R here to represent reaction on armor class. Semicolon, AC, colon, 1d6. It'll be 10 minutes. And it will be on their next roll. So, the last change I'm going to make is to this. I'm going to get rid of everything outside of the attack one and set this up to be the attack bonus or bardic inspiration. And everything else stays the same. This way you can now go through, and when you're in a combat actions group, you simply can hover over to determine which one is going to be applicable and then make the effect or apply the effect to the given character. That just simplifies that particular aspect of it. You'll be a little bit more selective about what you now give them, and you can coordinate with that player. Say, I want to be able to use this as my reaction to my armor class. You just simply apply that, and it will not fire if that particular effect doesn't happen. So if we go through and the ape makes an attack, it doesn't go away. It will stick around until they receive their attack that will trigger the adjustment against the actual armor class. So let's have a look here. Let's say that the succubus is now going to attack the ape. In theory, when I make this attack, I have no idea why it rolled 3 times. But one of those did have, you may have seen the shadow of the d6 die, one of those did have the bonus modification to the armor class, which gave them the miss that they were looking for. I don't know why it rolled 3 times. There might have been an effect on that particular ape other than that I'm not sure of. But regardless, it has now come into play and done. Maybe there's an advantage that was in play that I had active somewhere. Or it just took 3 mice clicks. Not entirely certain. So I don't know. But it worked the way that I wanted it to. The effect is now gone from our ape, and the miss here was correctly calculated because it took 1d6 off the total attack die roll, giving a temporary higher armor class to the ape during the attack. That's what we wanted. And that completes everything that we have to worry about when it comes to combat inspiration. The next feature this character is going to gain is called extra attack. And anyone who has watched any of my barbarian or my fighter-based videos will know what I'm about to explain when it comes to extra attack. Extra attack is not something we have to add to our actions tab, but you as the player have to remember that now when you make a melee or ranged attack during your combat attack round, you get to attack twice. So let's say you have, in this particular case, I believe we have a dagger, if I'm not mistaken. Apparently we have no weapons. I'm pretty certain we had a dagger. Yeah, we have a dagger here, so let's equip that. There we go. Now we have a dagger. So if I were to attack with this particular dagger, I can attack twice in a single attack combat round. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that your normal turn or round within a turn, if you will, consists of a movement round, an action round, a bonus action round, and potentially a reaction if you haven't already used one or used things up that burned your reaction. Movement round, you know what that means. You can move around, you can do it before your attack, you can do it after your attack. It's entirely up to you. Your action round can be either an attack action, a spellcasting action, or any form of other action you deem necessary during a particular combat encounter. So that could be flipping the lever on a trap where one of your opponents has just stepped on but didn't trigger the trap himself. You could drop the lever, attack that trap, or action that trap. That would be an example. But you'll notice I said the word attack action. The attack action is where the extra attack comes into play. And it gives you the ability to use your melee or ranged weaponry during that situation. What the extra attack action does not give you is the ability to make use of an extra attack during a bonus action or during a reaction. And the reason why I say that is typically a bonus action, unless it specifically states it is an attack action, you do not get 2 extra attacks. You get generally 1 attack or whatever the effect it is that you're applying. During a reaction, however, it is not possible at all to make use of 2 attacks during a reaction round. You are given the opportunity to make 1 melee-based attack, and it explicitly states it as part of the attack of opportunity, for instance, that you can only make 1 attack. You do not get the ability to swing that dagger twice during the character's retreat from your sphere of influence. You are given the ability to attack once because they're actively in the process of moving away from you. Therefore, you're reacting to that movement. You're only going to get 1 swing at him or her or them or whatever. So you got to be cognizant of the differences of when an extra attack actually comes into play. Some DMs, they're a little bit more lenient around that. Other DMs are strictly by the book DMs that will actually require you to stick to the letter of the law when it comes to how and when extra attack applies. Now, that's not all bad. Extra attack becomes extremely useful in that you are now able to attack a particular creature or creatures twice. If a specific bonus action gives you a specific declaration of an attack action, you get the ability to attack twice in your bonus action as well. But it has to be explicit in that wording, just so that you are aware. So theoretically, under the very perfect circumstances, you could potentially attack up to 4 times, but not necessarily with the Bard. Other classes have that capability, but the Bard can sometimes run into a specific restriction. And that's how extra attack works. You don't need to do anything with it. You just have to remember that you can now attack twice whenever you're in a combat situation and making a melee or ranged base attack. At level 14, you are now unlocking a feature called Battle Magic, which gives you the ability to cast a spell and then make a weapon attack, a single weapon attack, I should say, as part of the bonus action. This is where a perfect example of negating your extra attack capability comes into play. However, you are still technically attacking twice because normally when you cast a spell, you can only cast that spell during an action round. You cannot generally attack after you have cast a spell, but Battle Magic is giving you explicitly that capability to make 1 weapon attack. It doesn't have to be melee, it could be a ranged weapon, so it's entirely up to you. It is also entirely up to you as to whether you want to add this to the Actions tab to indicate to the Dungeon Master that you're actually going to make use of it. I'm going to, just for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to make sure that I add it to the College of Valor group. And then when I actually go through and make use of this, all I have to do is click on the Battle Magic and say I am using Battle Magic to weave this spell, and then I'm going to use my bonus action to make an attack. The Dungeon Master can now say, I want to see that particular feature. Can you please drag and drop it into the chat and share it with me? And then they can open it up and they're done. So it just keeps the flow of the whole combat situation moving as smoothly as possible. And that brings us to the end of this particular class specialization. As you can see, in comparison to the College of Lore, this one is more combat oriented. They're a little bit more heavily involved in those combat encounters, therefore they have been given the ability to be more engaged in those combat situations, thus ensuring that your bard character will be just as heavily involved in the action as you are describing those actions in your songs or your stories. This is why I say it's very good for an artistic style of person to play this particular character, because they can make use of both their artistic capabilities as well as the enjoyment of the combat scenarios and be more heavily involved in those situations. And with that, I hope you have found this particular video useful and informative for you in helping set up your character, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.